Greetings, my good bitches. The name's Francis, QueenCokeFrancis. I'm an editor, Twitch streamer, drag artist, and I'm here because you saw the title, you clicked on it, and here we are. I'm turning 30 next month, and I can count on one hand the amount of times I've seen my home country, the United States, truly be united. Most recently, it was our collective thirsting over that Luigi's Mansion fellow. Before that, it was wanting James Corden permanently exiled after that Let's Get Loud video. And before that, it was wanting Public Enemy #1 and America's next drag superstar, Osama Bin Laden, nuked from orbit. I realize that there are currently people out there who are old enough to drink, but not old enough to remember this one event that single-handedly changed almost every aspect of American life. I'm on thin ice with the YouTube partner program for even talking about this, so if you really don't know what happened, just ask anyone over the age of 25. I don't know. So this guy was in hiding for 10 years, and then he was finally gunned down in 2011. Some say it was SEAL Team 6, others say it was this SEAL who tweeted that he wanted this group of young male Kamala voters as his personal concubines. So,
who's to say?
Either way, pretty big day for the US, and I'll never forget Barack Obama's swag walk away from the podium after announcing this news to the nation. So after this, US forces seized the shared computer found at his hideout in Pakistan and searched his hard drive to try and piece together the truth about this criminal mastermind. And what they found was, kind of really funny. I mean, not everything was funny. Some of it was some of the most horrific content that you'd ever see in your life. And I'm obviously not going to go into detail about it, not just for monetization purposes, but out of respect for the people who were affected. Bin Laden was one of the most evil figures of the 21st century. We already know this. But based on the contents of his hard drive, he was also apparently a massive weeb. Yes, you heard that correctly. Interspersed between the Al-Qaeda secrets that the FBI had been looking for, they also found movies, TV shows, anime, video games, hentai video games, and most importantly, this picture. Now again, this was a shared computer and he had a bunch of kids. So not to rain on our parade or anything, but the likelihood is far greater that at least one of his kids was a massive anime nerd rather than the dude himself. But hey, you never know. He wasn't exactly a fan of Western media, but everyone has their guilty pleasures. It's always the most homophobic politicians you see tapping their feet in the bathroom stalls at the Minneapolis airport. So who's to say that America's public enemy #1 didn't love Disney, or Metroidvanias, or Final Fantasy? Anyway, there were certainly some spicy entries in the list that's currently publicly available on the CIA website, and I decided to rank them. Why? Who knows? But before we get into it, if you are a fan of watching a very tired drag queen talk about nerd shit forever, I ask that you please pirate an entire collection of hentai, and when your roommate walks in on you and asks what you're doing, give them the only correct response by going ahead and unzipping your pants and dick slapping those like and subscribe buttons as hard as you can. Also, if you could do me a massive favor and also dick slap that notification bell as well, that would really help me out. The YouTube algorithm hasn't exactly been kind to me lately, unless I'm talking about right-wing grifters, and apparently I'm not even showing up in people's subscriptions feeds, so please do me a massive favor and give a big ol' hearty dick slap to that notification bell. That would really help a bitch out. Now, as the title suggests, I ranked every movie and TV show found on his hard drive. I was originally going to rank the games as well, but I had only played a couple of them that were on the list, and a lot of them are only playable with certain emulators, which sadly I do not have access to at this time. So I felt that it wouldn't be fair for me to rank a bunch of games that I had never actually played. But never fear, before we get into the rankings, we will of of course be taking a look at his extensive game collection. This is my channel, after all. Since he allegedly had a Steam account, I of course used my trusty woke content detector to determine if Osama Bin Laden's game collection was, in fact, too woke. A lot of them were old DS and other Nintendo games, back from the good old days before all this DEI nonsense. Street Fighter 2 and 4 were also both found on the hard drive. Super reassuring, because I know those games have gotten crazy woke in recent years with their body type selections. Both Counter-Strike and Half-Life are listed as recommended and contain no woke content whatsoever. I don't have to explain how funny it is that Counter-Strike was on there. They also discovered a number of Naruto, Bleach, and Dragon Ball Z games, so clearly there's a pretty big Japanese influence here as well. But my absolute favorite entry on this list was none other than the true GOAT, Final Fantasy VII, which, when we looked at it in my other video, was flagged as just informational. As we'll see later, Final Fantasy VII was a pretty big deal in this household. It's very possible that he identified with Cloud Strife and all of his friends in that eco-terror- oh. Anyways, 7 Rebirth slapped, and I'm glad he missed out on it. Also discovered in this treasure trove of a hard drive was a number of old school dating sims and hentai games. They're withholding the names of these games from the general public for copyright reasons.
Sure, Jan.
Listen, we all know he hated the United States, but as far as we know, he didn't say anything about Japan. So, anyway, let's see if his taste in movies and TV is as impeccable as his taste in games. Alright, it looks like we're kicking this list off with Chicken Little. Not a super strong start, I'll say that much. As a great man once said, Chicken Little is dumb, and he's a coward, and that man is not a coward. It's a retelling of the classic story of a whiny little bitch boy spreading conspiracy theories that the sky is falling. And the most unrealistic aspect of that movie, in my opinion, is that nobody believes any of them, and it currently holds a 37% on Rotten Tomatoes. Not the worst movie in this list, but still a pretty mid choice in my opinion, so I'll give this a C. Next up, The Three Musketeers. Now, it wasn't actually specified as to which Three Musketeers was found, but I'm assuming it was either the 1973 version with Oliver Reed or the 1993 version with Charlie Sheen. The 1973 version was kind of a banger. The Disney version was super forgettable. I think I saw it like once as a child and then never thought about it ever again. But since I don't really have any strong feelings about either one, I think that evens out to a B. Here's the first of several documentaries that were found, and this one is a classic. BBC's Greatest Wildlife Moments, narrated by the absolutely goated David Attenborough. It's basically a best of compilation of 50 years of wildlife documentaries that the BBC made, and David Attenborough is like just the voice of natural history in this current era. No matter how divided we become as a species, we're always able to somehow unite over our collective appreciation for the Earth's beauty. Seeing this entry didn't make me lose my shit, but you definitely won't hear any complaints coming from me, so I'll give this an A. Continuing on with this solid documentary collection, we've got National Geographic's Kung Fu Killers. This is the first of a few Nat Geo docs, and this is an old school one from 1974. It follows Australian stuntman Grant Page as he examines the growing popularity of martial arts films at the time. If you have any interest in martial arts films, definitely give this one a watch. It's actually pretty interesting. And for that reason, I'll give it an A, because why not? Next up, we've got Bleach, the first of several anime entries on this list. Like I said, someone in this house was a big anime nerd, and they also found a number of Bleach video games on the hard drive as well. I personally haven't watched enough Bleach to really form a solid opinion on it, but I like what I've seen so far, and I'd probably give it a watch if I didn't cancel my Crunchyroll subscription, because I won't give those people another dime. So I will also give this entry an A. Looks like we're off to a pretty good start here. So next we've got Mysteries of Egypt, which is a short documentary from 1998 about, the mysteries of Egypt, mainly about the discovery of King Tut's tomb in the year of our Lord 1922. Now, when this movie was originally released, it was specifically designed for IMAX, which is pretty extra for a 38-minute documentary, in my opinion. But since this was found on a shared computer, I'm guessing he wasn't viewing it the way that it was meant to be experienced, so a lot of that magic probably wasn't there. So I'm gonna give it a B for that reason. Next up, Batman Gotham Knight. This is a 6-part anthology film that was originally animated in Japan, and it has such a cool blend of both anime and Western animation. Kevin Conroy reprises his part as Batman for all 6 episodes. I'm a huge Batman fan, and I had never actually heard of this before doing research for this video, so I'm really glad I was introduced to it. Banger entry here that gets a solid A. As I mentioned earlier, a certain someone was a big Final Fantasy VII fan, and not only did they have the original game, they also had this next entry, which was part of what made me want to make this video in the first place. Final Fantasy VII Advent Children. Jesus Christ on a tiny bike. This movie is bizarre. Not bad necessarily, like it's technically well made and visually it's amazing, especially for the year that it came out, but it's also genuinely incomprehensible to those who had never played the original game. And that's what makes the inclusion of Advent Children here so special to me. This movie isn't just for people who played the original game. It's for people who are big-time nerds over it. Advent Children is by no means an S-tier film, but the fact that it's there is why I'm giving it an S rank. I stand by that decision. Come at me, woke moralists. Moving on, we've got another Nat Geo documentary. This one is called World's Worst Venom. Personally, I thought that title belonged to The Last Dance. But in this particular context, it's talking about scorpions and snakes and shit. Man, I loved this kind of stuff when I was 10. I loved a lot of all of this stuff when I was 10. Again, I know that these probably belong to his kids, but I just want to believe. But this is another entry that I don't particularly have strong feelings about, so I will give this one a B. Next up, one of the most overrated movies in the Disney universe, Cars. Do I think it was a bad movie? Not at all. But holy shit, this might be the only Disney movie that's more overrated than Frozen, and that's really saying something. Listen, say what you want about Frozen, but at least it wasn't a gateway drug to a movie starring Larry the Cable Guy. What if Cars had feelings? What if they did? Anyway, this gets a B. I just realized, I spent the other night trying to bedazzle this hat, and, you can't even see the bedazzling, so, can you still see the bedazzling even now? I don't know. I suffer. All right, we have got yet another super mid entry into the kids films category. Ice Age: Dawn of the Dinosaurs, the 3rd entry in the Ice Age extended universe, because that is apparently a thing. I do have to wonder though, did he also have Ice Age 1 and 2 on hand? Because it's concerning that he potentially went into Ice Age 3 without having seen the events of the first 2 films, which could definitely cause some confusion. I don't know, I saw the first one like once when it first came out in theaters, and now on movie number 5 they're like in space or something. To each his own, I guess. I'll give this one a C. Next up, we've got Storm Rider: Clash of the Evils, an animated Chinese film that I had never even heard of prior to doing research for this. It looked like it was cool, so I checked out the trailer. Do you guys like drinking games? Take a shot every time they say Kirin.
The only ones in the world with Kirin blood.
But I thought that Fire Kirin no longer exists in this world.
You need the Kirin blood.
Where will I find this Kirin blood?
The Kirin beast.
So there is someone alive with Kirin blood. Kill me.
Yeah, I don't know. I personally wasn't super impressed. It looks like his taste in anime was, I don't want the other Weebs to come after me for this, so I'm gonna give this one a C. My point still stands on his taste in the art form, but I nearly fell out of my goddamn chair when I found out that this hard drive contained none other than the Devil May Cry anime from 2007. All 12 episodes, too! It's still unknown if he owned these games as well. I didn't see them on the list, and it would certainly be a departure from the collection of Metroidvanias and turn-based combat. As you guys may know, I am a huge DMC fan, and the anime was mid. But similar to Advent Children, this is another example of the work itself not being S tier by any stretch of the imagination. It's just the fact that it's there, and how hard I laughed at its discovery. This might be the only context in which this anime would earn an S ranking. Either way, I'm renewing my Netflix subscription for the new one that's coming out next year. Alright, next up we got another anime entry with some good old Dragon Ball Z. There were also a number of DBZ games found on the hard drive as well, and I have a feeling that this entry for sure belonged to his kids, because Dragon Ball Z is one of those things where, like, you just kind of have to grow up with it, you know? Not that you can't appreciate it as an adult, but it's easier to if you grew up with it. Does that make sense? Please don't take this as me throwing shade at DBZ. I just don't have the emotional attachment to it that a lot of other people do. I'm giving this entry a B. Please don't send me death threats over this. The next entry is something that I grew up with, and it looks like British kids shows were a pretty big staple in this household because there was a sizable amount of Wallace and Grommet episodes recovered on this hard drive. The reason I'm like this is because I grew up on British TV. Why else would my sense of humor be drier than Ben Shapiro's wife's P-word? I don't know, Wallace and Grommet and all of these other claymated shows are so timeless to me. Apparently this show is also getting a revival in the near future. Grommet is actually so cute that even one of the worst people on the planet couldn't resist this little mouthless treasure, so I'm giving this one an A. Next up, we've got a biography on the Weeb himself. I don't know, sis. A little, on the nose, don't you think? This isn't the only documentary about himself that was found on there. I mean, listen, have I sometimes looked myself up on Reddit to see what people say about me? Yeah, I will admit that. But do you see me looking up fanfics about myself? Obviously not. Not very demure of you, girl. I'm gonna give this one a C. We're getting back into the nerddom with the discovery of the Resident Evil movies in this absolute goldmine. Now, similar to the Three Musketeers movie, they did not specify which of the Res Evil movies were found, but if you haven't seen them, they are so ass, truly. Like, Borderlands movie aside, we've become so spoiled with good video game adaptations lately, like Fallout and The Last of Us, but the Res Evil movies are truly representative of how far we've come, because historically, all video game adaptations were terrible. While I do appreciate this progress, these movies are so bad, so I'm giving this entry a C. Here's another Nat Geo documentary. This one's called Predators at War. Or, as I like to call it, White House infighting. This is another nature documentary that follows the top 5 apex predators of Africa. Well, he definitely did seem like the kind of dude to love watching lion feeding or snakes swallowing people whole. I don't know. I don't really have a strong opinion on it either way, so I'll give this one a B. Next up, we've got more British TV that I grew up with, the one and only Mr. Bean. God, this guy brought me so much joy as a deeply weird child. Absolutely tragic that there are only 15 episodes of this show. If you're not familiar with this show, part of the beauty of it was that it was accessible to people who couldn't speak English because Rowan Atkinson's physical comedy spoke louder than the words his character could not speak. So I can definitely see why it would appeal to a household of people who probably spoke little to no English. Another example of British TV uniting the world. I'm giving this one a high A. Next up, another anime entry that I'm praying people don't send me death threats over. We of course have our boy Naruto, which accompanied several games with the titular character as well. Now, I loved this show when I was 12. Yeah, it's one of those animes that you just, I don't know, wish was better. It definitely fits the tastes of someone who's also into DBZ and Bleach, but it won't stop me from saying that this guy's taste in anime was pretty basic. No Cowboy Bebop, Trigun, Death Note. These are all pre-2011, you know. Oh well, I'm giving this one a B. Please don't kill me. First Disney entry we've had in a while, and boy is it underwhelming, to say the least. Home on the Range. Really, out of all the Disney movies out there, it reminds me of how I recently, I can't even talk about this without laughing. It reminds me of how I recently learned that George H.W. Bush's favorite movie of all time was, I'm not kidding, Viva Zapato. You know, the one with Marlon Brando and Brownface. Like, out of all the movies that dude was in, that's the one you're rolling with. Okay. Work. Oh, in case you're wondering, George W. Bush's favorite movie was Field of Dreams. I don't know why that makes so much sense. Anyway, Home on the Range is a very bad film and stars notorious frenemy of the QueenCokeFrancis extended universe, Roseanne Barr. She's not the reason it's bad, but come on. Like, out of all the Disney... Okay, fine. This is our first D-list entry. Ridiculous. Maybe this just wasn't really a Disney household, because next up on our list is Ants. There's so much lore surrounding this movie, and the fact that it was basically Jeffrey Katzenberg's big middle finger to Disney after his public feud with Michael Eisner. This movie was weird. Not bad, but definitely weird, especially for a kid's movie. And it's definitely a DreamWorks production. Personally, I will take Dave Foley as the leading character over Woody Allen any day for many, many reasons. Anyway, this one gets a B, I guess. Here is our final entry in the British television category. It's Sha The Sheep. The show came out after my childhood, so I missed the boat on this one, and I therefore don't have any emotional attachment to it. But it looks really cute. I'm glad to see that claymation isn't a dying art form. I'm sure the kids and this video's titular character were big fans. It ran for 6 seasons. That's nothing to sneeze at. Would that be 6 sneezins? I think I forgot to take my Vyvanse when I wrote this script. Anyway, I'm giving this one a B, but if it's an A grade show, please just let me know in the comments. Finally, spicing things up with some superhero content, we've got Next Avengers, Heroes of Tomorrow. This movie is about the Avengers kids getting to be soups too, so I can see how that would appeal to the young folk. But it's just another example of, like, out of all the Avengers movies you could have picked, even the ones made by 2011. This is the one you picked? Maybe. Just maybe. Our main man has terrible taste in superhero movies. Whatever, this gets a C. Next up, we've got an absolute legend here, folks. It's the one and only Tom and Jerry. Now, this show shaped my childhood. Man, I wanted to be cool like Tom when I grew up. Because even though he lost every battle, he still somehow had overflowing riz.
What's that? Howdy, bitch.
According to the full list of disclosed materials on the CIA website, this hard drive contained 138 episodes of Tom and Jerry. Can we just talk about how many 138 is? The sheer amount plus the content itself, I gotta give this an S. Color me impressed. We're coming up on our last couple here. Both these choices are bordering on self-congratulatory, to say the least. We've got the CNN documentary In the Footsteps of Bin Laden. This one was supposedly well received by critics, but again, girl, little on the nose, don't you think? Normally I might put this in the B pile, maybe even the A pile, but there's just no subtlety with this guy. So unfortunately, I'm gonna have to give this one a C. Maybe that'll teach him a lesson. Here we are, gang, our final entry in this impressive collection of media found on this guy's hard drive, and boy is it a doozy. I don't want to be too disrespectful to Morgan Spurlock because the guy just passed away recently, but boy does he make it hard not to be. After achieving massive success with Super Size Me, where he blamed McDonald's for all of the symptoms of his chronic alcoholism, Spurlock decided to take a self-indulgent romp through the Middle East and pretend to look for the whereabouts of Osama Bin Laden, while conveniently scheduling the birth of his child around the trip as he made the entire movie about himself. I'm not sure if our titular character was laughing his ass off at this corny-ass white man acting a fool in the desert, or if he was furious that his name was even attached to this mess. So our final entry here is also our final D-lister. Well, there you have it. This was an idea I had, and just look where we are now. Before we wrap this up, I want to make it abundantly clear that by making this video and making jokes about all of the arguably silly things found on Osama bin Laden's hard drive, I am in no way trying to make light of anything related to this. And that includes both the direct victims and their families from that fateful day in 2001, and especially the insane amount of post-Patriot Act Islamophobia that permeated the nation and then never left. If anything, it got worse. I wish I didn't have to clarify this, but when I make jokes about the darker aspects of our lives and culture, it's never my intention to punch down, and my motto is to always make sure that the victim is never the butt of the joke, which I'm hoping was the case today. I know the majority of you are super cool, and you already know that, but sometimes I'll take a stroll through my comment section and start to feel like comprehension and sarcasm and nuance are getting harder to come by these days. Anyway, just wanted to throw that out there. Usually my comments are super cool, and that's why some of them are the winners of the last video. Jeremy Anderson Boise says, and here I was thinking of Margaret H. Hamilton, the electronics and software engineer on the Apollo NASA missions who literally coined the term software engineering. This is what it's like to be straight. Groovy6081 says, this video single-handedly saved me from losing my mind as I am helping my family get ready for our family Christmas party. Stirring candied orange peels while listening to you talk about whatever you want is an experience. That means everything to me. And finally, Simaru Phoenix says, it was the steppiest of times. It was the mommiest of times. You too can be featured in the next video. Leave a comment below. I will pick my favorite ones and give you a shout out next time. If you would like to guarantee your name be featured at the end of every video, please consider joining my Patreon. If you join any of the membership tiers that are conveniently named after Fallout protagonists, your name will be featured at the end of every video. You might also get other cool stuff like access to my Discord, behind the scenes content on how I make my wigs, ad-free and uncensored versions of my videos. So if you love my content and my drag, you can support this channel directly by clicking the link to my Patreon in the description box. If you would like to see me simp for my favorite game characters and get visibly frustrated in real time, please follow me on Twitch. I stream most Saturday afternoons Pacific Standard Time, and I am still raising money for the Palestinian Children's Relief Fund. If you want to see even more of my clown mug elsewhere, please consider following me on Instagram or TikTok. My handle for all of the above is at QueenCokeFrancis. If you enjoyed this video and you haven't done so already, please pirate an entire collection of hentai, and when your roommate walks in on you and asks what you're doing, give them the only correct response by going ahead and unzipping your pants and dick slapping those like and subscribe and notification buttons as hard as you can. Thank you to all my patrons and subscribers who have helped my channel grow and thrive the way that it has been. And of course, as always, until next time. Okay, wait, so apparently George H.W. Bush loved Viva Zapato so much that he named his oil company after it. The Zapato Corporation is named after the movie. Wait, it's John McCain's favorite movie too? What is happening?